I'm upset at the exclusionary policies that we have in place, and we must change those policies. I will not give up the fight. I am still a minister in my heart, and I will continue to minister. I will continue to be a voice for the LGBT community.
That Pennsylvania pastor has now been defrocked by the United Methodist Church for refusing to change his view on marriage equality. Reverend Frank Schaefer had been on a 30-day suspension for officiating at his son's same-sex wedding. During the suspension, Schaefer was ordered to stop performing same-sex weddings or turn in his credentials. He refused to do either. The Bishop of the Eastern Pennsylvania Conference, Peggy Johnson, said in a statement, Reverend Schaefer met with the Board of Ordained Ministry today and declared that he is not willing or able to uphold the laws of the Book of Discipline in its entirety in the future as required by the trial court's verdict. When asked to surrender his credentials as required by the verdict, he refused to do so. Therefore, because of his decision, the board was compelled by the jury's decision to deem his credentials surrendered. Joining me now for a last word exclusive, Frank Schaefer and his son, Tim. Reverend Schaefer, when you did this, did you realize that you were going to be in such direct contradiction to your church's position on this subject?
Yes, actually, I did know that at the time. This was back in 2007 when I performed the wedding, and at that time, actually, I expected some repercussion. I was actually ready to be defrocked or be fired back then, and I let my superiors know about it, and never heard a thing about it until earlier this year when one of my parishioners actually filed a complaint against me.
Tim, when your father was able to preside at your wedding, I'm sure that was a wonderful and important element of the wedding, but were you worried about his future?
Oh, of course. It was actually one of the most difficult decisions that I've ever made in my life. I knew the position I was putting him in, of course, that he could lose his career, his calling, really, and that would be devastating. But I also knew, on the other hand, if I didn't ask him, he would have been devastated that he hadn't been able to participate in what was a really momentous day for me, really important day for me.
Reverend Schaefer, explain the Methodist Church position on this. As I understand it, the Methodist Church is accepting of gay parishioners, but they reject, as many Christian churches do, the actual practice of homosexuality. They object to anyone actually having gay sex, and of course object to same-sex marriage.
Absolutely, and also in addition to those two things you mentioned, it is not allowed for homosexual people to become ordained ministers. And that really puts our homosexual brothers and sisters who were created by God to be homosexual in a very, very precarious light. It actually, we treat them as a church denomination as second-class Christians. We certainly are discriminating against them in many, many ways. To me, the actions of love, their expressions of love, are actually deemed sinful by the church. I can't even imagine what that's like as a homosexual Christian to be told that. It must really throw them into inner turmoil, and it's just not right. That's sometimes what I refer to as hate speech by the church, even though they don't intend it to be a hate speech, but it comes across as that to our homosexual brothers and sisters.
Tim Schaefer, you got past the wedding with absolutely no problems, as your father has just told us, and now here we are years later. Finally, someone's filed a complaint about it, and the worst you feared has actually happened. How does that feel for you today?
It makes me feel partially responsible. I mean, this is something that my dad has done for me, and while this has been a really horrible ordeal for the entire family, of course, very painful, especially for my father. I'm really proud of my dad because from the beginning of this whole process, he's stuck to his convictions. He had several opportunities to promise never to do another gay wedding, and he saw this really as an opportunity to talk about the issue, bring about change, and really stick with the LGBT community.
Reverend Schaefer, do you believe that the Methodist Church is misinterpreting the mission of the Methodist Church here somehow, and that it is time for the Methodist Church to evolve into an accepting position of this? And do you think you could find doctrinal justification for that?
Absolutely. I, in fact, believe that the United Methodist Church is already evolving. There are so many people that express their support for me and what I've been doing in the last several months. All United Methodists that are saying, you're doing the right thing, we believe in you, keep doing what you're doing. Many of the LGBT members of our church have contacted me, hundreds of them, sharing their painful stories with me. And I'm saying it is absolutely time to rethink and to reinterpret some of these, scriptural passages that we keep quoting. Times are changing, and we no longer believe in a flat earth, right? And that is actually part of the Old Testament too. And so now we know that homosexuality is no longer a choice. So why don't we change our position on that as well? We have to.
Well, Reverend Schaefer, I know you have the gratitude of millions of people for having done this and taking this stand, and most importantly, you have your son's gratitude. Frank Schaefer and Tim Schaefer, thank you both for joining me tonight.